I'm Richard Hyman, an engineer on the Android Developer Relations team. With the launch of Android Jelly Bean 4.3, we've seen some great new features for users and developers alike, and I'm going to run you through restricted profiles. In Jelly Bean, we announced multiple users, so you could share your tablet easily with your family members. Everyone would create their own profile, sign in with their own Google accounts, install their apps, and just use it as if it was their own tablet. But if you were sharing your tablet with a child, this sometimes got a little bit complicated. You'd probably create them a profile, but then sign in with your own Google account, install some apps, maybe put a PIN code on the Play Store, change the synchronization settings, maybe disable some apps. Just really try and make it a restricted, safe environment for that child to use. With restricted profiles, this has become a whole lot easier. Restricted profiles are based on the primary user's profile. They share the account, the Google account, and the applications of that primary user, but in a restricted manner. The restricted users don't get access to your Gmail, calendar, Play Store, or in-app purchases. The primary user can choose which apps they can access and whether those apps can access things like device location. As a developer, the Restricted Profile API allows you to offer up fine-grained control over your application and your application's restrictions. And the user manager has also been extended so your application can find out what restrictions are being imposed on it. Application restrictions are managed under the device user settings, so when you create a new restricted profile, you'll see a list of all the applications and you can choose which ones are available, and your application will automatically appear in this list. But if you have specific settings, you're going to want to let the platform know about them. So how do you do that? You add the intent filter into your Android manifest for the get restriction entries. This is going to prepare Android to add that settings button in the settings screen, like this. So here we've got the settings button, and when you press it, it's going to populate with your restrictions. Here we've got some example restrictions, full restriction enabled. In this particular app, you can choose whether or not the child user, the restricted user, can change the language or access any in-app items. So to populate these settings, the system is going to broadcast the action get restrictions intent to your application. And it's going to expect that you return with an array list of restriction entries in the bundle. So in the broadcast receiver, when you get the broadcast, the first thing you want to do is call go async on the broadcast receiver. This is going to keep it active and also give you a pending result object to return your restrictions in. Then you create an array list of restriction entries and put it in the bundle and return it. We've got three different types of restriction entry. We have the Boolean type, just on and off. We've got the checkbox single select from a list, and we have multiple selection from a list. Three different types. And looking at those in code, we have three different constructors for those different types of restriction entry. And all of those constructors take a key so that later on you can retrieve the setting from the system, and also a default or current value. Here we've got the Boolean type and then the single choice type. Maybe in the single choice type you want to use it for the content rating of the content available to a restricted user. So you could have single choice of under 12, 15 plus, whatever. And then you can just choose one of those and make the content in your application relevant for the user. And then the multiple choice type is going to take an array list of strings for the defaults. So now the system's asked you for your restrictions. You've returned them in this bundle, an array list of restriction entries. And then the device owner has been and set the exact restrictions for their child. So the final step, of course, is going to be to retrieve those restrictions from the system. So on resuming your application, you can recall the restrictions set by getting hold of the system service for user service, and then get the application restrictions for your package. Of course, this may come back without any restrictions in it. In that case, you'll be running in the device owners or an unrestricted profile. But if you're in a restricted profile, you'll see all the restrictions. You can collect them back from the keys that you specified earlier and find out the settings that there are. If you don't want any specific settings, but you just want to find out if you're in a restricted profile at the moment, you can call get user restrictions and just check if that bundle is empty or not. If it's empty, you're not restricted, and if it's not, you're almost certainly in a restricted profile. So that's how restricted profile works. But there is, of course, just one more thing. If you'd rather have your own nice, tidy UI inside your application, a single place to manage all your restrictions, that when the device owner's running your app, they can see it, and then when they go through settings and press it, it launches your activity instead of showing the settings directly in the settings screen, you can have custom restrictions. So when the get restriction entries broadcast is broadcast out to your app, instead of returning an array list of restriction entries, you can return an intent to launch your custom activity. This is similar to the way it works for battery usage, data usage, things like this, where you can launch an intent into your application to show your own screen. So that should be all you need to know about restricted profiles. They're especially useful for content-based applications, and I'm looking forward to seeing what use cases you come up with. Thank you very much.